Real world assets, fungible or non-fungible tokens that represent traditional finance assets on the blockchain. Real world assets can represent tangible assets such as real estate or intangible assets such as government bonds, carbon credits. And basically, the tokenization is the process of bringing these assets on chain as security tokens to take advantage of blockchain technology, speed, settlement, transparency, all of that. Any asset of value can be tokenized and utilized on chain in transactions, which means marketplaces, maybe custodians, portfolio managers, all of those products will need to be built around this. But this is a good resource to keep in your bookmarks. Real world asset folder is necessary at this point, just like a meme coin folder is necessary, just like Bitcoin ordinals folder is necessary in your bookmarks on your browser. Whenever you don't know what to do and you're tempted to surf on crypto Twitter and doom scroll and reply and troll, I think you're better off going back to those folders that you set up with that reading material and just checking in on these different subsectors of the crypto economy and just see where the ball is going. We've seen tokenized real world assets on Algorand, on ETH, on Solana, I think on Avalanche, using Axelar, and now Polygon for the second time. We're seeing them used for these quote unquote experiments for real world assets. Here's a Medium account called Piggylet, and this is just highlights of real world asset news from late July into early August. And they've got all of these nice visuals for data, but they talk about legal and regulatory frameworks. Circle, the issuer of USDC, became the first global issuer to receive approval for such stablecoins in Europe. These legitimate issuers are going to need to comply with regulations, get licensing, and be basically favored by their governing bodies to be the one-stop shop for these real-world assets. I don't think we're going to see tokens just launching willy-nilly without a process similar to how common shares of stock register with the SEC in the United States. It's a lengthy process. It's an expensive process. We've seen total real-world asset value increase and with a huge uptick here in Q3 of 2022. I don't know if that's when a new stablecoin was issued, something like that, or maybe some huge protocol issue that I'm not aware of, or maybe just a new way to calculate this data. But let's take it from here. It's more than doubled in 2 years, right? That's 50 to 60% growth, and then another 50 to 60% growth the following year. And it looks like it's starting to go parabolic. Listen, guys, bridges have gotten better. Wallets have gotten better. There are just more chains with more protocols in general. Liquidity is fragmented, but you have more opportunity for these legitimate use cases of crypto to grow. One of those use cases is stablecoins, right? So stablecoins have become a little bit more reliable since UST implosion, and the infrastructure is better. As much as I knock the lopsided amount of funding that goes into infrastructure, it's better. You can't deny it. Let's talk about real world assets and why this is something that banks ultimately want, and they're going to basically be the lobbyists for the crypto industry to push this through. Tokenization in general, we already named some of the advantages, but just efficient settlement, right? You want this stuff to settle quickly. And then, of course, being able to make illiquid markets more liquid. I have some silver bullion. It is a pain in the ass to buy and sell that physical silver. Anyone that has too much of that, they're never going to be able to offload it. Maybe you'll be able to borrow against it with these tokenized real world assets or trade it in small quantities rapidly, the way you could trade tokens, great. This is one of the reasons why tokenization is an actual legitimate practical use case for blockchain and crypto. And I said that, for years, financial institutions, they have been exploring how to do this, releasing internal documents, setting up kind of research committees, coming up with documentation to give to their high-end clients when this stuff is live and usable and the proper infrastructure is there, tested, and ready to go. It's actually rare, probably, for any of these big, multinational banks to not have some digital asset or blockchain project happening, either publicly or behind the scenes. And I'm looking at a stat now, you can't see it. It says the Boston Consulting Group predicts that by 2030, the combined value of tokenized illiquid assets, such as real estate and natural resources, will approach $16 trillion. Now, before I did this stream, I did go off and I hunted down an expert in real world assets, someone who I'm going to have on the channel. He's a former lawyer handling some international consulting as it relates to crypto and real world assets. And he let me just pick his brain for a half an hour. A lot of this doesn't make sense in some markets, and real estate being one of them. He said the United States, this is not going to take off the way people think, for the simple fact that you could already buy fractionized real estate through these different, basically, they're phone apps, where I think it's Peer Street, things like that. You could buy $5,000 worth of a apartment building and earn yield on it. This is already done. But in other parts of the world, some of this might make more sense. And he and I talked about the different challenges, whether it be technological challenges, which he thinks a lot of them are solved, which is why we see this ramping up of RWA narratives. But the other is regulatory, and he said we're not close to solving that in a lot of the West. But anyway, let me keep going here. So I'm going to read right from this article. In simple terms, through the use of blockchain, organizations can represent real-world assets as these tokens, which can be fractionalized, traded 24/7, self-custodied in many cases, and they have a backing. Whether they have a one-for-one redemption is maybe a whole nother story. But it's the idea that it's representing something that actually exists, like maybe gold, like bonds, like a currency, or like real estate. Let's talk about the advantages here, and then I'll get into some more statistics. But number one is just faster and more efficient settlement. Tokenized real-world assets will allow banks to do what they currently can't do on their current infrastructure, which is outdated by decades. Delayed settlement has all kinds of problems for banks. It's usually caused by inefficient manual servicing, all these middlemen, or settlement periods that are just not realistic in today's world of lightning fast transactions. And originally, this is obviously in place for a reason, right? They want to limit counterparty risk and all that. But now with blockchain, we can kind of cut corners, it looks like. Tokenization now will allow these institutions embed transactional data and automated processes like interest calculations. Couple this with atomic settlement, instant settlement on the blockchain and on the blockchain ledgers. Assets can trade securely in minutes. And of course, this presents huge operational benefits to global businesses. Remember, the main driving selling point of Bitcoin was that it's borderless. It says here, this will drastically reduce reconciliation overhead and removes errors caused by all the intermediaries. The other thing here, tokens are programmable. They also are smart contract capable. They can self-execute pre-agreed functions, calculations, compliance, disbursements. AI will find natural integrations here as well, I would imagine.
Every quantum leap, I'm finding myself trapped inside of people differences.
Number 3 is fractionized ownership or fractionalized ownership. Man, the way it works now, fractionalized ownership is tough, right? You could basically have an LLC and then you could buy, let's say, a property, and then you can have investors, 10 investors with 10% ownership of the LLC. Therefore, they are 10% owners of the asset. There's legal costs, there's administrative costs, and in the end, there's still that trust me, bro, and also you have risk depending on your jurisdiction. Right? You might have limitations on the number of participants. Liquidity is still an issue, right? How do I get out of this LLC? How do I sell my 10% to another owner? How do I borrow against it? How do I actually exercise ownership over it? Well, tokenization, it simplifies all of this, definitely lowers the barrier of entry and opens the market to new investors. If I have 50 bucks, maybe I can go on Solana or Avalanche or Polygon and buy 25 bucks worth of a apartment building in New York and then 25 bucks of an apartment building in Singapore. I'm diversified with only 50 bucks in the game, and I can unload that anytime I want and then buy right back without going through, all the processes that exist when real estate is being bought and sold. I bought a house, man. It is the process just doesn't make sense. Yes, it's very complete. The amount of middlemen that I had to deal with and the months that went by. My experience buying a property, it was a cheap property. I only was putting down $13,000. I was pre-approved for $330,000. Pre-approved. The bank said, you can borrow this much money. And I said, that's okay. My property is only $130,000. So I put down 10%. I'm pre-approved for $330,000 and I'm only borrowing like a third of it. And the process still took 4 months. If I'm pre-approved, why can't I get that money that day? It doesn't make any sense. Buying real estate's a disaster. The closing costs were $7,000. So I put down 13. I had to pay another 7 for the closing costs. They did the appraisal during the process. They had to do an appraisal twice because so much time was going by. And what's funny was I bought the property for $129. By the time the second appraisal came around, the property already appreciated in value 5%. So I had 5% extra equity in the property with absolutely no way to ever tap that equity unless I sell or refinance the house. It doesn't make sense, but that 5% extra equity that I gained because of the closing period, I could, if it was just tokenized, I could have given that to somebody else and said, hey, now we're partners on this rental property. I'm giving you 5%. Now your job is to find the tenants, vet the tenants, do the landscaping, and make sure the bills are paid. But I'm going to set this 5% on a stream where you get 0.1% every so often until the 5% is earned over time. You can do this with tokenization. You can do this. The ledger itself supercharges digital portfolio management with the ability to provide a single view of private and public asset data. This is going to revolutionize the way portfolios are managed. Maybe people don't want to custody their own assets. They shouldn't have to. I would love to have my own wallet showing my various portfolios with one of those portfolios highlighted in a certain way that I know, oh, that's the one that's being managed by Fidelity. That's the one that's being managed by a DAO. That's the one that's being managed by my 401k manager. All these things are going to come. It just seems like it's not going to come exactly when everyone thinks it's going to come, like this cycle.
Every quantum leap I'm finding myself trapped inside of people. Differences underneath the fundamental side of ego. Truly not that equal, that's why they say don't meet your heroes. We are part of this evil, so pardon all my amigos.